Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today, we are doing an update on the ongoing war between the Russian Federation and Ukraine. And as we speak, we're hearing reports that Russian forces have finally broken into the town of Lyman. And if someone can correct me if I'm pronouncing that wrong, you can see where that locale is on my map. And I wanted to talk about how things could start to get even more difficult for Russian forces approaching Sloviansk from the direction of Lyman, if I'm pronouncing that right. But the distance right now from the distance where Russian forces currently are, and the kind of the power base, the defensive power base of Ukrainian forces in this eastern Donbass area of operations, specifically near Sloviansk, is about 12 miles. The distance, again, from Sloviansk to Lyman. Now, where the Russians are going to have some very, very significant difficulties is as they press kind of in this southwesterly direction from Lyman, and as they approach the Donets River located here. Now, I wish I could zoom in a little more. Unfortunately, I don't have that ability. But this is just not one river. There is probably one river and a multitude of creeks, streams, marshy areas, ponds, lakes, and what have you, and an associated dam as well in this area that is going to make it very, very difficult for Russians to conduct a forced crossing, considering the defensive buildup near Sloviansk. Obviously, Russians trying to break out of Lyman in the direction of Sloviansk are going to face the 79th Air Mobile Brigade, 95th Air Mobile Brigade, and a number of territorial units, as well as a reserve formation of the 4th Tank Brigade being held back in between Sloviansk and Kramatorsk. Now, all these units have their corresponding attached heavy artillery assets in each of these brigades. There are also independent artillery units within the Ukrainian military as well, which are going to be fixed and prepared to attack a Russian movement in the direction of Sloviansk coming from Lyman. And again, crossing these areas are going to be tremendously difficult for Russian forces, and I don't anticipate we will see much more of a Russian drive coming from Lyman down towards Sloviansk in this southwesterly direction. Where the Russian forces are either going to win or lose this is in the direction of Popazna and the direction of Izum in this area here. And you can clearly see what the Russians are trying to do in terms of this Pincer movement. Now, they have two different options at this point. Obviously, you have the goal of enveloping Lysychansk and Severodonetsk, and that's going to be done locally coming out of Popazna. And then you have the secondary option of Russian forces also continuing kind of in this southwesterly direction, cutting off Ukrainian forces at this main highway near Bakhmut and circumventing the Ukrainian defensive lines near Bakhmut as well. And the more likely breakout by Russian forces is probably going to come up here or occur near Izum at this point. But again, the Ukrainian forces have a multitude of defensive lines that have been set up in this area with reserve formations as well, ready to respond to any possible Russian breakout. So we're continuing to see more or less Russian success taking place in the vicinity of Popazna, And there are early reports that Russian forces may have taken control of the town of Lyman, and we're also receiving reports that there could be a fairly large group of Ukrainian soldiers surrendering near the town of Lyman. Now the question is it because those Ukrainian forces were cut off when Ukrainian forces blew the bridge near the Donetsk River? I would say that's probably what in all likelihood occurred. Those forces that may have been left as these last stand forces obviously knew that eventually they were going to run out of supplies and they couldn't fall back at this point because these bridges had been blown. But with that being said, also the prospects of the Russians crossing the Donetsk River and conducting a forced crossing, given the closeness of the large amounts of Ukrainian heavy artillery that we know are operating out of Kramatorsk, Sloviansk, and the multiple layers of a defensive line, it's going to be very, very challenging for Russian forces. And we also know that the areas just kind of to the southwest of Lyman are heavily forested, again with a lot of lakes and streams and rivers and what have you. So going to be a very, very difficult issue for the Russians to kind of circumnavigate that challenge. The real area where we're probably going to see the breakthrough, if it occurs, is going to be back here towards Izum. And I wanted to give you a view of the tactical map where you can kind of see how many Ukrainian forces are arrayed against the Russians, and what both the Ukrainians are trying to do and kind of what the Russians are trying to do as well. Very, very difficult road ahead, probably weeks more of this sort of fighting, especially if the Russians are looking towards an advance on Sloviansk and Kramatorsk. Going to be very, very difficult in the days and weeks ahead, especially if they're not able to finally reduce and take control of Severodonetsk here in the east. Once they do that, if the Russians are able to do that, then that's going to reset the lines along the Donetsk River here. So the next goal will be obviously Lysychansk. And then obviously the line would be pushed up all the way to here towards the Donetsk River. But after that occurs, and if that occurs, the real drive for the Russians are going to be kind of in this area here near Popazna, and obviously a possible renewed drive towards Izum. And we could also look to see a new area of Russian offensive operations further to the southwest towards the Crimea Peninsula, or just to the north of the Crimea Peninsula, if the Russians choose to do that. And the whole concept behind that would be to try to draw additional Ukrainian forces from this battle space to reinforce some of those areas. Now, where the Ukrainians currently have the advantage is the current recruitment and deployment of manpower. Now, obviously, the Russians are doing all they can in terms of trying to target some of these training bases that are being used by the Ukrainian military. We continue to see cruise missile strikes and tactical air efforts being used against these Ukrainian training grounds as the Ukrainians continue to increase its force posture and recruit and mobilize eventually towards that 1 million personnel goal that we have heard quite a bit about. But is it likely that the Ukrainians would need to pull forces from this area to reinforce some other areas? At this point, I would have to lean against it and say the Ukrainians should have the ability to reinforce some of those areas. And then I guess the question is, what do the Russians do next? Are we going to see this covert mobilization by Russian forces? Obviously, Russian institutions are still training, equipping, and fielding very large formations of forces, and that continues unabated. The Ukrainians obviously are not able to attack deep internal institutions of the Russian Federation, whereas the Russian Federation is able to attack these institutions of training of the Ukrainians. And that's going to kind of where this situation is going to get a bit tricky for the Ukrainians as the Russians continue those rear area strikes, and the Ukrainians are not able to do that. So we'll continue to monitor the situation, report, analyze, and continue to bring you information for your consumption. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day.